3 days ago, Ripple's CEO Brad Garlinghouse stood up in front of the financial world and made an announcement. He said Ripple is heading for the best quarter in its entire history. The best quarter in its entire history. Prime brokerage revenue tripled. Fortune 500 companies are now running their treasury operations on Ripple's infrastructure. Total payment volume crossed $100 billion. Ripple is now valued at $50 billion. Deutsche Bank is using Ripple. Aviva Investors is using Ripple. Société Générale is using Ripple. Morgan Stanley just named the XRP ledger as a settlement layer candidate in a $2 trillion market. The best quarter in Ripple's entire history. And in the exact same quarter, XRP fell 23.7%. Not up, down, almost 24%, while the company behind it was having the best 3 months it has ever had. I have been making videos about XRP for weeks now, and I have been honest with you about the things that were not adding up. But this specific contradiction is the one that broke me, because I could not explain it. I sat with this data for 2 days trying to understand how it was possible. And today I finally found the real explanation. And the explanation involves something about how XRP actually works that I guarantee most people holding it right now do not fully understand. Something that once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Something that changes how you think about every single piece of good Ripple news you will ever read from this point forward. I am going to give you that explanation today, step by step, simply, clearly, and completely honestly. Stay with me, because the next 12 minutes will change how you think about XRP forever. Step 1. Let me show you exactly how extraordinary Ripple's first quarter of 2026 actually was. I need you to feel the full weight of what Ripple just achieved. Because without that context, the price drop does not feel as shocking as it actually is. Ripple spent roughly $3 billion on acquisitions in 2025. It bought Hidden Road for $1.25 billion. It bought G Treasury for $1 billion. It bought Rail. It bought Palisade. It bought Solvexia. 5 companies. $3 billion. The first quarter of 2026 was the first full 3 months where all 5 of those acquisitions were fully operational inside Ripple. And here's what happened. Ripple Prime, the prime brokerage division built from Hidden Road, tripled its revenue in a single quarter. Tripled. That means revenue grew 300% in 90 days. Hidden Road clears approximately $3 trillion per year for over 300 institutional clients. And that division is now generating 3 times more money for Ripple than it was when Ripple bought it. G Treasury, now called Ripple Treasury, is being used by Fortune 500 companies. Some of the largest corporations in America are running their treasury operations on Ripple's infrastructure, moving money in 1 minute instead of 5 days. Deutsche Bank started using Ripple's infrastructure in February 2026. Deutsche Bank manages approximately $1.4 trillion in assets. It is one of the most important financial institutions in Europe. Aviva Investors started using Ripple's infrastructure in February 2026. Aviva manages approximately $400 billion in assets. Société Générale started using Ripple's infrastructure in February 2026. Société Générale is one of the oldest and most powerful banks in France. And Morgan Stanley, which manages over $1 trillion in client assets, just published a research note saying the tokenized securities market will exceed $2 trillion by 2030 and specifically named the XRP ledger as one of the core settlement layer candidates for that market. Total processed payment volume through Ripple's network crossed $100 billion this quarter. Deutsche Bank, Aviva, Société Générale, Morgan Stanley, Fortune 500 companies, $100 billion in payment volume, revenue tripling, and XRP fell 23.7%. How is that possible? Step 2. The explanation that changes everything. Let me give you the explanation now, because you have waited long enough for it, and you deserve the clear answer. Ripple the company and XRP the token are legally and financially separate entities. I know, you have heard this before. Every XRP video says this. But here is what those videos do not explain clearly enough. Here is the specific mechanism that makes this separation devastating for XRP holders right now. When Deutsche Bank uses Ripple's infrastructure to move money internationally, the money that Deutsche Bank pays for that service goes to Ripple the company, not to XRP holders. When Aviva Investors uses Ripple's payment rails, the revenue goes to Ripple's balance sheet, not to XRP holders. When Fortune 500 companies pay Ripple for treasury management through G-Treasury, that revenue stays inside Ripple, the private company, not accessible to anyone who owns XRP. Here is the number that makes this devastatingly clear. Ripple is valued at $50 billion. It is a private company. You cannot buy shares in it. The only way to invest in Ripple is to— Actually, you cannot. There is no public stock. There is no way for ordinary investors to own a piece of Ripple's $50 billion success. Unless you thought XRP was that way to own a piece of Ripple. And that is the misunderstanding that is costing millions of XRP holders real money. XRP is not Ripple equity. Owning XRP does not give you a share of Ripple's revenue. It does not give you a dividend when Ripple Prime revenue triples. It does not give you a payout when Deutsche Bank pays Ripple for services. You own a token, a digital asset, and that token's value depends on one specific thing and one specific thing only. Step 3. The one thing that actually drives XRP price. Here it is. The answer that most people do not know and that I spent 2 days searching for. The only Ripple product that creates actual buying and selling demand for XRP is on-demand liquidity. Not hidden road, not G-Treasury, not the MasterCard partnership, not the DTCC integration, not Deutsche Bank using Ripple software, not Morgan Stanley naming XRPL as a settlement layer. Only on-demand liquidity. Let me explain exactly why. On-demand liquidity is the specific Ripple product that uses XRP as a bridge currency for cross-border payments. When a company in Mexico wants to send money to a company in the Philippines, on-demand liquidity converts Mexican pesos into XRP instantly. Sends the XRP across the XRP ledger in 3 to 5 seconds and converts it into Philippine pesos at the destination. This process requires buying XRP at the source and selling XRP at the destination. Real buying, real selling, real demand for real tokens. This is the mechanism that directly connects Ripple's payment activity to XRP's price. Every other Ripple product, every fiat payment, every RLUS settlement, every bank using Ripple's messaging technology without touching XRP generates zero direct demand for XRP tokens. And here is the brutal fact that explains everything. Right now in 2026, on-demand liquidity is still mostly used by remittance firms in Latin America. Companies like Bitso in Mexico, not Deutsche Bank, not Aviva Investors, not Société Générale, not Fortune 500 treasury teams. The banks that are making Ripple's Q1 the best in history are mostly not using on-demand liquidity. They are using Ripple's fiat payment products. Products that work beautifully. Products that save them enormous time and money. Products that make Ripple the company extremely valuable. Products that do not require a single XRP token to be bought or sold. This is why Ripple can have its best quarter in history while XRP falls 24%. The two things are almost entirely disconnected right now. Step 4. Why the XRP community is so confused and so angry right now. Now that you understand the on-demand liquidity mechanism, you can understand exactly why the XRP community on X is in such a state of confusion and anger right now. For years, the XRP community operated on a simple belief. Ripple wins. XRP wins. Every bank that adopts Ripple is one more institution driving demand for XRP. Every partnership Ripple signs is one more step toward mass XRP adoption. Every piece of good Ripple news is good XRP news. That belief was not entirely wrong, but it was incomplete. It was true for the period when on-demand liquidity was Ripple's primary growth product. During that period, Ripple's success did translate to XRP demand. But Ripple has evolved. It has become a much more complex company with multiple products. Most of those products do not use XRP. They use fiat. They use RLUS. They use traditional settlement methods made faster and cheaper by Ripple's technology. And as Ripple has evolved, the link between Ripple's corporate success and XRP's price has become weaker. Not broken, but weaker. Significantly weaker than the community assumed it would be. This is the source of the anger and confusion on X right now. People who bought XRP expecting Ripple's success to automatically lift the token are discovering that the relationship between the two is much more complicated than they believed. And a famous crypto analyst on X called Altcoin Sherpa, who has over 400,000 followers, put it bluntly this week. He posted that XRP is down almost 40% in the last year, while Bitcoin is up. And he said until Bitcoin dominance breaks, altcoins like XRP will keep bleeding. 400,000 people saw that post. And the replies were mostly XRP holders who did not know how to argue with it. Step 5. The 2 things that could change everything before the end of 2026. I have been honest with you for 4 steps. I have shown you the contradiction. I have shown you the mechanism. I have shown you why most Ripple good news does not help XRP directly. Now I am going to show you the 2 specific things that could flip this entire story. Thing number 1. The Clarity Act. Brad Garlinghouse himself said on March 27th, 3 days ago, that he still expects the Clarity Act to pass. The timeline has moved from end of April to possibly end of May, but he believes it will happen. The Clarity Act is critical for one specific reason. It creates a permanent legal framework for stablecoins and digital assets in the United States. And when that framework exists, U.S. banks get the legal certainty they need to run on-demand liquidity corridors with XRP. Right now, major U.S. banks want to use on-demand liquidity, but their compliance teams say no because there is no permanent legal framework defining how XRP can be held and used for settlement on their balance sheets. The Clarity Act removes that compliance barrier. And when it removes that barrier, the same Deutsche Banks and Aviva Investors who are currently using fiat Ripple products will have the legal permission to switch to on-demand liquidity with XRP. When that switch happens, the connection between Ripple's success and XRP's price reconnects. Fully, completely. And the price of XRP would reflect the $100 billion in payment volume and the tripled prime brokerage revenue and the Fortune 500 treasury adoption all at once. The Clarity Act is the switch that turns Ripple's best quarter in history into XRP's best quarter in history, and it could pass before the end of May. Thing number 2. Bitcoin breaking above $75,000. I know, this sounds like a different topic, but here is why it matters directly for XRP. XRP historically moves at 1.8 times Bitcoin's magnitude. When Bitcoin rises 10%, XRP tends to rise 18%. When Bitcoin is trapped, XRP is trapped with it. And right now, Bitcoin is trading at around $86,000. Bitcoin dominance is close to 60%. That means 60% of all crypto market money is in Bitcoin, not in XRP, not in any altcoin. When Bitcoin dominance breaks, when it drops from 60% toward 50%, that money does not go back to cash. It rotates into altcoins, into XRP, into everything that has been stuck while Bitcoin was dominant. Bitcoin dominance breaking plus Clarity Act passing would create the conditions for the most explosive XRP price move since July 2025. Both of those things are possible before the end of Q2 2026. Step 6. What you should actually do with everything you just learned. You have been with me for 5 steps. You now understand the contradiction better than most XRP holders in the world. Let me give you the specific practical guidance that turns this knowledge into action. Watch on-demand liquidity volume, not Ripple's revenue, not partnership announcements, not bank adoptions. The specific number that tells you whether XRP's price is about to move is the volume of transactions flowing through on-demand liquidity. If that number starts growing as the Clarity Act approaches, the disconnection between Ripple's success and XRP price is healing. If it stays flat, the disconnection continues regardless of how many Deutsche Bank sign up. Watch the Clarity Act timeline. Garlinghouse said end of April to end of May. If the bill passes in that window, every major U.S. bank that is currently using fiat Ripple products gets the legal green light to switch to on-demand liquidity. That switch is the trigger. Watch Bitcoin dominance. When it drops below 55%, the altcoin rotation has started. And XRP, with its institutional foundation and its ETF products and its MasterCard partnership and its DTCC integration and its Morgan Stanley endorsement, will be one of the primary beneficiaries of that rotation. Those 3 metrics: on-demand liquidity volume, Clarity Act progress, Bitcoin dominance. Watch those. Ignore everything else, because everything else is noise. Those 3 numbers will tell you what is actually happening before the price tells you. My honest assessment: Ripple is building something genuinely extraordinary. The best quarter in company history, while XRP fell 24%, is not evidence that XRP is dying. It is evidence that the connection between Ripple's success and XRP's price has not yet been activated. The activation switch is the Clarity Act. And the switch is 11 days to 6 weeks away from being flipped. When it flips, everything Ripple built in Q1 2026 suddenly becomes visible in XRP's price. Not gradually, suddenly, because markets do not price in possibilities slowly. They price them in all at once when the final barrier falls. That is what the record Q1 actually means. Not that XRP is broken, but that the trigger has not fired yet. Now I want to hear from you. Did today's video finally explain the contradiction that has been frustrating you? Type yes if this video gave you the answer you have been looking for. Type a no if you still think XRP is fundamentally broken and this explanation does not change your view. And type waiting if you are holding your position and watching for the Clarity Act before making any decision. Drop your answer in the comments right now. I reply to every single comment in the first hour after this goes live. And I want to know whether this kind of deep, honest explanation is what you want more of on this channel. Subscribe right now, because the Clarity Act vote could happen between the end of April and the end of May. When that vote happens, I am posting a real-time video the moment the result is announced. That video will tell every XRP holder exactly what the vote means for their money immediately. You need to be subscribed and have the notification bell on for that moment, because that moment could be the most important single day for XRP in all of 2026. Thank you for watching. I will see you when the Clarity Act drops, and I will see you in the next one.